We sure can.
Yes. Okay. All right. I see the reactions. All right. Well, it is a small group, so maybe we'll have more of a conversation here. But thank you, Lee, and everyone here for having me here. I am recovering from a bit of a cold, so if I feel like coughing, or I'll just mute myself for a minute and excuse my not so nice voice today. But thanks for having me here. A lot of you voted for desktop apps. It's the reality, I think, for a lot of enterprises. So maybe you don't need to speak out, but maybe I can get a raise of hands. Like, so how many of you build and maintain desktop apps today? Okay, quite a few of you are. Robert, definitely. Yep. Yeah, Alex. Okay, and how many of you are doing Windows-only things like WPF or WinForms or other WinUI, other Windows technologies, versus how many of you are going cross-platform into macOS and Linux as well? Yeah. All right, some WPF in there. I'll keep the chat window open so I can see your chat. Okay. Okay, so that sounds like, oh, cross-platform in there. That sounds kind of the reality. Yeah, good for you, Kevin. Desktop apps can be a little boring, but I think it, it runs a lot of businesses. So I do this as a formal presentation, but again, let's maybe take an hour of our evening. I appreciate everyone's time. Hopefully you've had some dinner. I will go eat after this, so let's keep it to maybe an hour. And I do have some pretty slides, but they're not important. Let me fly through them and then maybe try to show you as many things as I can. I can put you all under kind of a friendly A and maybe show you some things that we are working on for desktop apps, for AI, for cross-platform. So we'll see how this goes. All right, so let me make this a little bigger. Full screen. Okay. So like Lee said, I'm Sam. I live in Northwest Pennsylvania, work as advocacy manager for Progress Software, a lot of products that we try to advocate for, kind of trying to make developers more successful with the latest tech and our stuff. And that's me pretty much online on most places, GitHub, Twitter, X, Mastodon, all the places. So like I said, a lot of times we go to user groups and conferences and we look at all the shiny things with web and cloud and AI, and yet we often come back to desktop apps that are running our businesses because it's important, but not perhaps the coolest kid. A lot of what I am talking about today will be based on .NET. We'll look at a little bit of other things like React and Flutter as well if you want. But for the most part, this is a Microsoft slide, but modern .NET is very flexible. Runs on just about every platform. The tooling is great on Windows, Mac, Linux. Ecosystems are great, so what's not to like? So a little bit of history on where things started. WinForms. I'm an old man. I think some of you in the room might have a few years on me as well. But this is nothing new. We have been trying to do desktop apps for 25 years now, even more. So WinForms is kind of where a lot of us started. I started back with like VB6 days, so let's not talk about that. But WinForms, like starting .NET early days, was kind of how we started. WYSIWYG editors and great experience, productive for the developers. That was 2001, 2002. Then 2006-ish timeframe, we had WPF, VB5. I see some folks who have done things before me. I've done some COBOL. I've done some basic Fox Pro back in the days. Okay, so WPF comes along, and this is where we are starting to see some maturity. We have XAML as a markup language. We're getting additional tooling. Things are starting to mature in the Windows stack. Now, like I said, XAML is predominantly how a lot of WPF apps wrote their UI, the visual tree. And it's the start of a lot of different things. And, it's a nice ecosystem, a lot of tooling. And over the years, XAML has enjoyed a lot of success in the desktop space as well as outside of desktop. So let's look at some of the successes. We will not talk about Silverlight. I did a few years of that. No, I mean, it actually, like what you see .NET today, like the open source cross-platform, actually started with Silverlight. We actually took XAML to make a beautiful Windows phone OS, which is great UX, but just didn't catch on. We tried a lot. Like I did like 3 years of Silverlight, 3 years of Windows Phone. So again, the UI UX was great. Not enough apps, not enough velocity to keep things going. We, or Microsoft rather, early 2012, 13 timeframe, took a stab at universal Windows apps. Well, it's universal, but doesn't run outside of Windows. But even within the Windows family, it was a lot of PCs and consoles, and HoloLens was a thing, Surface Hubs, so ran on a lot of things. And it was a unification of the UI and UX stack until it was no more. This actually is kind of how it has evolved into WinUI 3, which is the latest UX and UI stack, fluent design systems, well architected platform. Again, this one is also still Windows. Along the way, we had Mono taking .NET outside of Windows, making it run on everywhere else, and that evolved into Xamarin, which essentially ran .NET on iOS or Android. And truly native, truly cross-platform apps had a good run for about 10 years. Actually, earlier this year is when they sunsetted because it's evolved into something better. So you can see a lot of churn because that's just how desktop has evolved. We tried a bunch of things as a community as well. At one point, we realized that each of these platforms were talking a slightly different dialect. So wouldn't it be nice if we called everything the same thing? So we tried, and then GitHub issues became like a personal grudge match, which wasn't nice. So this went nowhere because we just could not agree on a simple language that everyone would talk into. So we had tools like Blend, which used to be a separate tool. XAML gets a little bit verbose. Older people like me tend to enjoy that. Young college kids, not so much. So, excuse me, we actually had quite a bit of tooling. This is not entirely gone. On Windows, you can still use Visual Studio, with a Blend as an extension. But again, there is help if you're writing it by hand. So all of that is to say there's a lot of choice, and based on how old you are or how young you are, this is very liberating or very confusing because we do have a lot of choice. Like I said, the top 4 are straight up Windows. I would say don't let anyone tell you that WinForms and WPF, which are 16 and 21 years old, they're running strong. Don't let anyone tell you that they're dead because they started running on .NET Framework, but now they run on .NET, the modern .NET runtime starting .NET 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. Think about the shelf life of most modern tech, like how quickly things come and go. Here you have like 15, 20-year-old things running just fine on .NET 9, which is something to say about it. But again, if Windows is your only thing, by all means, go do those things. But if you would rather do cross-platform desktop apps, then you have a bunch of other choices as well. If you're doing anything web, you have lots of choices because those are very welcome. How we welcome web apps to desktop has kind of evolved over time. Lowest hanging fruit might be PWAs, progressive web apps. You can make web apps be good citizens on desktop. You can do Electron, you can do Flutter, you can do React, you can do Uno platform, Avalonia, so lots of choices. Not all of it is maintained by Microsoft. A lot of it is open source and community driven. The last 2 are actually enabled by Microsoft's evolution of Xamarin, which we'll talk about quite a bit. Mac, Linux, for the 3 of you who run Linux as your desktop, more power to you. You can still do that, same native apps, but again, why would you? With the same tech stack nowadays, you can reach Windows as well. So similar story on Mac and Linux as well. Lots of different tech, and again, the last few are some of the latest things that you are seeing with XAML stack, with C#. You're able to cross-compile and make it into a nice native desktop app across platforms. Now, we said we'll talk just about desktop, but we are going to talk about other things as well. I see folks in the lobby, I'm going to admit, or yeah, there you go. Lee did it.
That's fine.
Thank you.
I got it.
All right. Why are we talking mobile? Because we are, trying to mix and match our technology stacks. It's good to be lazy, so we would like to have one code base that powers multiple experiences on the web, maybe on the mobile, maybe on desktop. So here's my, 1 minute spiel on all the different ways in which you can build mobile apps in general. I might be missing a few, but I say 2025 because I love it when we do like a single day hackathon. Let's build an app in a day. Like, no, you don't. It takes a lot of time to build apps that go in the store. But again, you have a lot of choice. If you want to go native, Windows, Android, iOS, go for it. Closest to the metal. It's just expensive because you're maintaining three different code bases. Would you rather not try cross-platform approaches, which takes your code from a single code base to multiple platforms? Again, lots of options here as well. You can do mobile web, you can do PWA. The whole Cordova thing with hybrid, it doesn't get as much love these days because with the same JavaScript now you can write truly native desktop apps. So, things like React Native, NativeScript are more popular. But down in the cross-compiled category is where you see most of the love because that's where you're writing higher level languages like Dart and C# and other things and compiling it down into native bits for desktop. So lots and lots of choices. Back on the .NET stack, this is kind of how Xamarin began. A lot of folks ask if this has gone away. It's actually still there as a part of .NET. It's just called .NET for iOS, .NET for Android. The idea is you'll write some shared C# and then write the heads like iOS, Android, and Windows separately. Good first step, but it does need you to know quite a bit about the native stack, which can be a little bit of a learning curve. Then we had Xamarin Forms. Again, had a good run for about 8-9 years. We started doing some abstractions, shared UI. You'll write it in either XAML or in C#, and you are going to render that across platforms. It helps to know a little bit about the purple, green, and blue, because there are times when you just want to do native stuff. However, the reality of this is true, complex desktop apps or complex native mobile apps get a little cumbersome with Xamarin Forms. There are some pain points. So the evolution of this is what's called MAUI, multi-platform app UI. The P is silent because MPAUI sounds like you're punching somebody, and that's not nice. So this has come a long way. This started with .NET 6. Now we are at this November, almost November in 2024. We are at the cusp of .NET 9. So over 4 years and 4 big releases, things have come a long way. iOS and Android are kind of given from Xamarin, but now we have added Windows and Mac, so very desktop heavy things. And the good news here is we are not reinventing the wheel. For Windows, it's using WinUI 3 to get you to Windows. It's using Mac Catalyst, which is Apple's bridge to make iPad apps run on the Mac desktop. That's what it's using to get you on a Mac. So nothing new, but well-established bridges to get you on desktop. A lot of people look at this and say, "Oh, this is very mobile first." And yes, that's kind of where it started. But I have customers who are big insurance companies, big banks who are making greenfield desktop apps with MAUI nowadays. So it is, getting quite a bit of traction, and tooling is stable, ecosystem is stable. So it is the evolution of essentially .NET cross-platform dev. WPF WinForms, those are not going anywhere. But if you would rather start a brand new desktop app today, and if you ask me which way should I go for .NET, my likely answer is going to be this because it's the most latest modern UI and UX stack. All right, so desktop ecosystem, a few more things that are not directly tied to Microsoft, but they're still .NET. I have good friends in Uno platform land and Avalonia land. These are all open source frameworks that let you build cross-platform apps, desktop apps with .NET and C# and XAML. The difference here is the XAML that you use is different. Uno platform uses Windows, WinUI XAML, versus Avalonia uses WPF XAML. So the language differences remain, but otherwise similar ideas. And they have done quite a bit of stuff on their own, like they have Figma toolkit integration that brings in your styles and layouts. Avalonia has a pretty nice thing called XPF, which takes your WPF apps and tries to make them over a shim, make them run on a Mac. So look. Excuse me, folks. So lots of choices, essentially. This is kind of what they do with XPF. So they replace the mill core architecture of WPF with their own implementation. All right, so along the way, if you're doing C# and XAML, then you know that there are certain design patterns that work really well. MVVM is one of them, model, VFV model, lots and lots of frameworks that help you out. Some of it is actually now baked into WinUI, baked into MAUI, baked into no platform, so which is nice. This actually is something that almost every desktop user, developer would, or is encouraged to use. This started from a Windows community toolkit. They had a Xamarin toolkit. Now it's all combined into a .NET community toolkit as of 8.0 onwards. It has a lot of MVVM, has a lot of UI, so a lot of help for developers. It's built in. And MAUI has a different community toolkit. Again, has lots of behaviors, lots of UI, other things just kind of built in, so developers can be productive. Now, if you are wanting to do other design patterns, you can kind of also do some of MVU, which is what most React or Fluent developers are more used to. Not as expensive of an ecosystem, but you can get a few frameworks and start doing MVU for desktop apps as well. Let's talk about the web here. And again, folks, it's a small room, so feel free to chime in with chat messages or just raise your hand, speak up on a microphone. Web, I think this is where if you look at the last 20 years evolution of the web. I mean, modern web apps, where how developers build web apps, they say it's ubiquitous, which it is, because your browser, every platform has a browser, and automatically makes your apps run everywhere. But it's not native. So if you're .NET, ASP.NET is kind of what you have done in the last 20 years. Still a great platform, open source, no barrier to entry, but it is primarily server-side first until, I mean, you can do Ajax until Blazor comes in. It was primarily server-side only, but now you can do a mix and match of everything. But .NET as a web framework is remarkably fast. You throw a web API in front of any type of data source, it's faster than Node.js, faster than almost any other platform you can think of. However, a lot of web developers will swear that they want to build their apps with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and that's the language of the browsers. Pick your SPA framework of choice, and up and running you go. Lee is asking, curious how MAUI is for Windows UI these days. I used it for a couple of years ago. Yes, it was very mobile first, but things have come a long way. There are lots of very desktop-friendly features now built in that serve both Windows and Mac OS. So like I said, we have an insurance company that is, well, actually in insurance, and then also a stock trading company where you can imagine the kind of performance they need from a desktop app down to a millisecond performance for stock prices. And they're doing it all in MAUI, all in a native Windows app. So things have come a long way. So we'll take a look at some of that. But back to the web story, we are mixing and matching essentially mobile tech and web tech nicely with desktop. Blazor comes along for the first time, making C# accessible to web apps as front and back. So you can do server-side Blazor, which is kind of similar to the ASP.NET model with the SignalR real-time bridge, or you can do completely client-side Blazor with WebAssembly, which is an open web standard. So now your browser, instead of running JavaScript, it can run WebAssembly, so similar performance, and that immediately opens up Blazor to be run as a PWA, progressive web app, or as an Electron app, or as a .NET MAUI app. The difference here is the how. So let's see, I think I have a few slides on this. So PWAs are essentially web apps which are good citizens on desktop. You can do push notifications, you can do service workers, you can do outside of process calls. So it's pretty nice. Electron is also battle tested. This is how you look at your VS Code. It's an Electron app. Slack, Figma, those are all Electron desktop apps, and they run pretty good as long as the developers know what they're doing. So where Electron gets a little bit of a ding these days is it's a Node.js app. So up front, it needs to load up those resources. And it ships with Chromium, a browser instance, so that developers have a canvas to lay their controls down. But it also means that you are paying a little bit of an upfront price. So that's the Electron way, as compared to the MAUI way, which is trusting that the user already has a browser on their desktop. A few more options here. Flutter, if you are okay with Dart. Again, it's an object-oriented language. It's not that difficult to learn. Then that'll reach desktop as well. The Flutter world goes through a few ups and downs in terms of how the open source ecosystem is, but it's still there. Solid option. React, if you're doing anything for React for web apps, then this would feel natural. You're writing, HTML and JSX, JavaScript inside of HTML, and then, or rather HTML inside of JavaScript. But again, it's nicely set up for mobile apps and desktop apps as well. This is the Microsoft .NET MAUI way, which is Blazor hybrid, or now also called MAUI hybrid. So it trusts that every user has a modern browser. So why ship a Chromium browser? Why depend on Node.js? Blazor and .NET MAUI have the exact same runtime, which is .NET. So might as well just run things on the metal and stick in a nice modern web view and call it a day. The web view will render any HTML, CSS, JavaScript, doesn't need to be Blazor, but it's a nice story. Performance is really good. So again, some Microsoft slides, you may have seen this, but the goal is with Blazor or web technologies, you can have the widest reach, or you can have a lot of depth with .NET MAUI, because these are truly native apps. You have full access to all of the platform APIs, or you can be somewhere in between with the hybrid, which is mixing and matching web with desktop or mobile. Blazor hybrid apps, more of the same. Essentially, you're sticking in a web view and you're rendering web content over a desktop canvas. That's the whole idea. And you can go to the store. You don't need internet because there is no server. There is no client. It's all right there. I can show this a little bit, but you can actually have web UI running natively on desktop, but powering the same experiences on web versus desktop. So there's something to be shared about, shared UI, shared code bases. This is truly reusing web UI, but not running it on a server, just running it locally on a desktop app. And it's also welcoming to Angular, React, and Vue, and I can show you some of that as well. So things are moving along nicely. So the point is, in the .NET world, you kind of see Blazor and .NET MAUI get the most love and innovation in terms of client technologies. I mean, yes, they have AI, they have cloud and other things, but in terms of client technologies, hopefully you can see that you can move from left to right. Whatever you have on the left, you can kind of bring it over to the right and start modernizing. Migrating apps is a big journey for most enterprises. You have to think about ROI. It's not that you can just drop your desktop app and just suddenly rebuild it from scratch. So you have to think about taking baby steps towards modernization. And hopefully these two techs can nicely mix and match and get you going. There are lots of upgrade assistants that might actually help. These are command line tools or Visual Studio tools that kind of help you migrate your app's runtime and then migrate some of your app's UI as well. Again, quick word, selfish word, that we make a lot of UI for .NET, and we make a lot of UI for JavaScript as well. So again, we are not the only ones. So please look around and use the right UI for your apps. Don't reinvent. Okay, how long did I speak? About 15, 16 minutes. So enough talk. Let's get to some code, shall we? Any questions from the chat room? Are you all awake? Do you have your favorite beverage? Are you on a couch? And then you can all heckle me. All right. Give me 1 second. All right. So let's start with Lee's question here about MAUI and desktop, because we get this a lot. So let me start with my command line. So this might be something you all already know, but I always like to show that .NET is very flexible. So if I do a .NET, like, it's not a system-wide installation, it's just a folder. You can blow away .NET, you can bundle .NET with your desktop, mobile, or whatever apps. So you can see that I am using .NET 9 RC2. That's the latest .NET that you can get in about, it's almost November, so in about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, we're going to get .NET 9 but RC2 already has a Go Live license. However, if I switch here to a different directory, let's look at downloads. Yeah, so this one here, you'll notice that I have a file here called global.json, right? So here, if I ask the same question, what version of .NET are you using? It's going to say .NET 8.402. This is a classic trick that we have been using forever. So your .NETs can coexist. Your Visual Studios can coexist. You can choose, excuse me, you can choose which version of .NET essentially you're using. So nice little trick. All right, so let's go back to where did I stop? Let's go back to this folder here. Yep, and I keep a whole bunch of stuff here. Let's look at MAUI with desktop, because that's where Lee was asking. So let's go in here, and I have VS Code running. I don't need to do all of that. I could have just opened up VS Code and just navigated to that folder. Anyways, so this is a classic .NET MAUI app, file new project. Let me know if the text is big enough to read. So compared to Xamarin, compared to other technologies that you may have seen, cross-platform technologies, this is a really nice step up, because from a single solution, and by the way, this is VS Code, you get the same exact solution from Visual Studio on Windows. There is a Solution Explorer, which is a little bit more smarter in how to show, like it doesn't show your OBJ and solution files. It's a little bit smarter. It knows how to show it, but I don't mind the raw view, so which is what the MAUI desktop here view is. Lee is saying .NET Conf. Yeah, .NET Conf is coming up in 2 weeks in November, mid-November. That's where you're going to see .NET 9. Lots of good content all through. And I'll be there talking about AI, because again, are you even real if you don't do AI these days? Okay, so what you will see here is you have these platform folders, which are all the different platforms where you can run your app. Tizen is a thing that Samsung makes, runs your TV or fridge. Windows, Mac Catalyst, those are your desktop apps, and you got iOS and Android. The point is these are not multiple projects, they are just folders. So all they have is any type of permissions, any type of delegates to get that app kickstarted. Now, ideally, you don't want to do anything more platform specific in those things. You want to do it common, and then keep everything here in the resources folder. This coming from having done WPF, having done Xamarin, having done other desktop things. This is really nice, because now you're truly sharing your app icons, your splash screens, your styles, your fonts, everything is shared. And when you do a build, it does a multi-platform build. So you can have a build just for iOS, in which case it only looks at specific things you have for the iOS folder and no more. So everything is shared. So let's go ahead and run this app. So let me see. Okay, so this will run on my Mac, and that's fine. So this is all live, and I'm going to run things as you see. So it might take a second to do a build. And feel free to have any more questions that come to mind. Oh, okay, hold on. This is because I have switched runtimes. Another common tactic here, folks, when you switch runtimes, things get confused between what versions of NuGet packages and what you are going to run. So we come into that folder, and then here's your bin, and this has not changed for .NET desktop apps. You just blow away the old artifacts and do a fresh build, and now your dependencies hopefully are good to go. So we'll do another build. Again, when I do a desktop build, I'm choosing Mac, but I can choose to, iOS or Android or Windows. I can choose whichever is the target platform that I want to run. I am not sure what my terminal is, why it's showing some other languages. I do not speak any Oriental languages. All right, so out comes a desktop app, maybe. There you go. So Hello World desktop app looks and feels the same way on iOS, Android, as well as Mac and Windows. So a couple of things right out of the gate is if I Sometimes it doesn't show over Teams. So there it does. So I did a hover, right? And then you can see that it's doing what's called mouse pointer. So between iOS, Android, and desktop, the big difference is touch versus mouse and keyboard, right? So you have to, meet the user wherever they are, have both types of experiences. And then I can actually right click anywhere, any pixel of my desktop, and I can have context menus. Again, common thing the desktop users use. So I can put whatever I want in there. This is a hamburger menu, commonly used for desktop apps, maybe web apps, maybe, but you can actually have it smart enough to say, oh, I'm running on mobile versus desktop, so give me tabs at the bottom if I'm running on mobile. And then you'll notice that here on the top screen where I have my menu, and Windows will be the same thing. So all of these are traditional Mac things except for that locations thing. That is mine. So I get to tap into the Windows or Mac system menu and offer my own, things. And you'll also see that it actually does shortcuts as well. So every action that you can take with your mouse and keyboard can also be, paired up with a keyboard shortcut, which is nice. And then if I click on this button here, you get these multiple window support. So this is something that desktop apps absolutely have to have, because you can have a WPF app with 10 windows and people dock your windows and run it all day. You can do the same with Windows, or with MAUI. So all of that is now baked in, and it's nice. So the way this is all working is, let's go into MAUI program. Nothing here. That's how the app starts up. If I look at main page.xaml, this is the menu bar that I was showing you. That steps into the system menu. You can have keyboard accelerators in place. Here's that image bot, the .NET bot, and I can have semantic properties. So accessibility is kind of nicely built in, so you don't have to do much if you have, regulations that you need to support. Then you can have tooltip properties. You can have a flyout context menu, so right click and do stuff. And then I think it was in the shell. So when you clicked on that button, it essentially opens up a new window. Here I'm just opening up the same view in the new window, which you don't want to do. But the idea is you can spin up any number of windows, give it size and dimensions. And that app shell is where that flyout was living. And again, you can choose to make this a tab bar if you want, and flyout if you want for desktop. So it makes sense. There has been a lot of developments in the .NET MAUI world to make it a desktop first citizen. So yes, we started very much from mobile first mindset, but almost everything you can think of with desktop, you can do with MAUI. Some of the Windows-specific things that you used to do, those did not make it over to .NET 6 unless you had a corresponding NuGet package or an API that was cross-platform. But everything else, you can build very, very modern desktop apps with MAUI these days. So let me show you a little bit more. Again, feel free to ask any questions as we go. Let me show you another one here. Yeah, let's see, where do you want to go? Let me show you an example here of just because we can doesn't mean we should type of an example. So this one here, let's go to one of the views. Yeah, I know I don't have Android SDK. Actually, I want to run this on an iPad first, or maybe an iPhone first. iPhone 16, maybe. Right, let's run this. Let me see, I might have to clear out the bin and OBJ again because I switched runtimes. I used to run these on .NET 8, but now they're running on .NET 9. Yeah, this one looks to be okay for now.
This is already looking substantially more powerful than when I did it a couple years ago. I think I had difficulties with like double clicks or like mouse overs or menus or like a lot of the things I think you've shown. So it seems like they've recognized that and fixed it.
Yep. You can have XY pointers over just about everything. So desktop is very well thought out. So this is a sample app that's actually in the store, so you can try it out. I'm not trying to show you the UI, but just a strategy behind some of this. So hold on, I'm going to move the Teams hovering menu off to one side so I can see the top of the simulator. So this is running, it's a Maui app, it's running on mobile, and what you get is a classic mobile first mindset, right? So you get the list of things, which is classic. So this is a crypto tracker. Everything is fake, obviously. You may or may not want to put a lot of your money in crypto these days, but you get the point. It's a crypto tracker. And so you tap on a page and you come to navigate to the second page, and this one's showing you how that currency or how that stock has been doing over time. Some of this is like fancy UI, but the point is this is a very mobile experience, right? A classic mobile experience. So what if we stop the app and without changing anything, we make the same app run on desktop, so Mac or Windows, right? So let's go do that again. And you'll see that the idea is for developers to not have to rediscover the UI, but understand that desktop and mobile are very different. So it is you should be catering to desktop experiences if you can, because you have a bigger surface area, you have mouse and keyboard, so experiences should be different. So we'll give it a second to spin up. Almost here. Is it running? It might be crashing. It's trying, like the menu bar is here. Wait, is it running on a different screen? Because it's not showing me that screen. Hold on, I'm going to see if it's on my other monitor. No, it's not. So it is just trying to load, but wouldn't load for some reason. Anyways, so if this did work, you would see that it is doing a little bit of smart thing. So you can see in the app UI, you can recognize where it's running. Is it iOS or Android? Then we go to one page, versus if it's Windows, then we go to a different page. And so what I was trying to show you is, let's try to run this one last time before I move away while I'm talking you through this. So the point is, if you see that you have bigger surface area, you can actually, that desktop page essentially combines multiple views and just puts them side by side. So instead of having to tap on a currency and going to a second page and then seeing how that currency has been doing and coming back, now you get a list on the left and you get the detailed view on the on the right. So the navigation pattern is just a little bit different. Yeah, this thing is just not launching on my desktop for some reason. So we're going to stop and move a little away from that. Okay, any questions so far? Any questions? 7:27 p.m. Eastern. So Lee, how about we go another 20 minutes? Is that good?
Yeah, sounds great. This is fantastic content.
Okay. Now let's look at a little bit on the Windows side, because Mac isn't the only thing. In fact, Windows is the predominant desktop OS. So you might see my lights flicker a little bit because this is a VM. I don't run heat in the wintertime. The VMs and the fans keep me warm enough. All right. So I have Windows here. And actually, before I go to Windows and show you, let me show you one more thing here on Mac, because I have a project that is good to go on that front, so you can see what I'm talking about. So first thing is, let me do this one here. So if you had developers in the house or teams in the house who are doing web apps, and here you are stuck with your desktop app, and you're thinking, maybe I can borrow some of their UI. Maybe I can bring some of that web goodness to desktop apps. And the answer is yes, you very well can. So this is still a .NET MAUI project, but the difference is in terms of, here, let me show you. If I do a .NET new list, this is going to bring back all of the templates that Visual Studio sees. It's all command line first. So essentially, the difference is you can start with a new MAUI app, or you can start with the MAUI-Blazor app. So this one says you might be wanting to bring in some Blazor, which is squarely for web apps, but you might be wanting to bring it in for desktop apps. So that's what this template is. So if I look at the code here, it is still a MAUI app, but the difference is here is in Maui program.cs, as the app is starting up, it gives you a Blazor web view. This is a modern web view, and it's a smart abstraction that says, are you running on Windows? Then let me get you Edge. Are you running on Mac? Then let me get you WK Web View. If you're on iOS, you get the WebKit one. If you're on Android, you get the Chrome one. So the idea is it just borrows the web view from the OS and just gives it to you. With that, we can come into main page.xaml. So for the young ones amongst you who don't like XAML, this is all the XAML that you ever have to see. Because the point is here, you're going to stick in a web view and say, go look at my web stuff. I am a desktop app, but I'm not rendering desktop UI. Go do some web UI. So let me move this window here, the Teams floating window. So here we are pointing to some very web things. There is www.root, which is a web thing, and I have an index HTML, and I have some routes and I have some components. Those are all sitting right here. So these are some web layouts. I have an imports.razor, which is very web-friendly things. And I have some routes, and in here I also have some pages, which is index and counter. Those are some very standard, Blazor components. These are web components. So essentially, if you look at the CS proj, we essentially told the CS proj that you should be able to make sense of Razor syntax, which is the Blazor language for defining components. So with that, if I run this app now, it is going to be the same Maui desktop app on macOS, but the UI is going to be all web UI because that's what we asked for. Yes, open anyways. Oh, okay. Okay, me switching runtimes. So hold on. We can fix that. Let's close a few things here on the simulator. Let's go to our Blazor hello. And common technique here, right? And when in doubt, blow away your NuGet cache, blow away your build artifacts because they get confused with different runtimes. All right, try that again.
So
All right, it's thinking. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I'm curious. This has always been the dream, like building one UI that goes to web and mobile and all the mobiles and desktop and like everything, right? Does that it I've never known a project that's actually done that successfully. Have you seen that
Yeah,
work in
we are
the real world?
we are starting to. We have a manufacturing industry customer who has an elaborate Blazor app, and they have some folks who go out in the field and they're often disconnected. They don't want to build a native iPad app, so they are or a desktop app, so they're sticking some of the Blazor UI into a Maui app essentially and just reusing it and doing it in a way that's disconnected and supports storing things to SQLite and then coming back to network or to the office and then it syncs back in. So we are starting to see more of that. So what you see here is a desktop app, but every pixel of this desktop app is essentially a web UI, not web UI as in it's running on a web server, it's running locally on .NET, but it is web UI, right? So the Blazor components, like if you've done Hello World Blazor, this is exactly the template. The weather app is right there. Now, to prove a point, so this is web UI laid on what is this? Okay, I don't need to install Parallels right now. Sorry, let's go back here. So this is web UI in a desktop app. And to prove a point, since I am on a Mac, I'm in Apple's walled garden. So nice things happen, right? So I can open up Safari here. And you can see up here, there is my machine and there is my Blazor Hello running at 0000, which is like, there is no local host. So this is essentially DevTools, right? So you can muck with HTML, CSS, JavaScript all day long. and see your network stack, change your CSS, do your JavaScript while your app is running on desktop. And you can do the same with Chromium on Windows. You can do it for iOS or Android. Yeah, it is pretty cool that you can actually, like all web developers will, live by DevTools, and you can do that. It's just running web UI running on a desktop shell, essentially. So that's just the Blazor Hello World type thing. Now let's take the same idea to the Windows side, and we'll look at the same app or a similar app. And this is looking really big for my resolution. So hold on. Can I bring it a tad down? There we go. So hopefully it's big enough and we can see. You don't always have to do this because let's start with this one here. So when I show you your desktop app showing a little bit of web UI, you are thinking that now you have to redo your desktop app as a .NET MAUI app, right? Because that's where you are getting the benefit. So the answer is no, you don't have to, as long as you're okay with the Windows app. So we see a lot of companies who are invested in WPF or WinForms or other legacy Windows tech, and they see all this shiny .NET MAUI stuff, and they're wondering, can I bring some of this to Windows if I don't care about Mac? So the answer is yes, because otherwise I won't be talking about it. So here is a WPF app, right? The only difference here is this WPF app runs on .NET 6 forward, so .NET 6 and onwards. So if you have older framework dependencies, some of what I'm showing you will not work because you're depending on a NuGet package that is not available unless you come to .NET 6. So again, use the upgrade assistant, use the API analyzers. So as long as you can get off just Windows specific things and get to a modern .NET, then this is an option. So in my references, you will see that there is a Microsoft web.webview.winforms or WPF, right? That is essentially the web view that MAUI uses, except here we can just call it web view. Web View 2, which is essentially the web view that Edge uses. We don't need to call it Blazor Web View, even though MAUI would essentially call it that. But here we are saying we don't care about Mac. Just give it to me on Windows. So here, excuse me. If I did not tell you, I mean, you will obviously know that this is a website essentially, but loaded up inside a WPF app, right? So kind of a low-hanging fruit, probably not the best thing you want to do. It sounds dirty, but you can stick in a web view and just load up some web resources in it. I think what's a little bit more realistic is actually building Blazor stuff inside of WPF. So here is another WPF app. It's not a MAUI app, right? If you look at the dependencies here, this one does have that NuGet package dependency of WebView.wpf, but here it also has www.root and it has CSS and it has a Blazor component built right inside of a WPF app, right? So again, if your users, if you did not tell them that this is a WPF app, but that little component is a Blazor web UI component, they would likely not know. So that's the nice mix and match. If you choose WebView 2 and if you're okay with Windows, you can do this all day long, which is nice. So that's WPF. And then let me show you the same exact thing on WinForms. So think about it, like 25, 26-year-old tech. Here is a WinForms app. Here's my form1.cs. If I look at the design view, the only thing, some of you might get nightmares if I pull up the designer here. The only thing is the web view 2. That's the only piece of UI we are sticking into it. And inside of my WinForms app is a Blazor or a web UI component. And again, if I run that, it's just going to be a WinForms app showing a web UI component. And it can be any web UI. And it can include routing. It can include some of the navigation things that Blazor brings in. So it's a web view, and now everything can be, web UI. Make sense? So there is a few nuances to this. So let me show you that. Which one shall I do? Let's do this one actually. This one here has a little bit of our UI. I'm not trying to show you that, but just again, the fact that some questions should arise like now that we are doing web stuff in desktop, can I do everything? Like, can I bring any web UI component? And the answer is yes. So here's a WPF app, right? In my dependencies, I am bringing in that same WebView.wpf, and I'm bringing in Telerik UI for Blazor, which is our UI suite for web apps. It's got no business on desktop, but if I mark my project to be a Razor project, then the SDK doesn't care. And I'm dropping in some web stuff. So let's go run this. It's running on WebView 2. So this is all web UI just rendered inside the canvas of WebView 2 on desktop, right? So all of this belong in the web. Now, one thing to note is some UI based on what you're using might actually, help you out. So here is, today's date, and it's a date time picker. So if I click on that, you get the classic mouse and desktop experience, right? You can choose from that calendar. But if I shrink this down, because now you're bringing in Blazor a little bit, Blazor has Bootstrap, and we can actually help out. So now you have almost like a mobile, user interface. And now if I tap on this, you get kind of a full screen view of that. Now it's a little bit more touch friendly, right? So this is just called adaptive rendering. So we do this for across, most of our UI. So somewhere in here, there's a date picker, and I'm just turning it to auto. So, look at the surface area you have, look at the, boundaries, and render yourself accordingly, is the point, right? All right. What else? Let's close this. And we didn't talk about this one here. I should mention this really quick because we talked so much about Maui. This is Electron, and this continues to be an option. It's just maybe not as popular these days, but it absolutely works. So where is my terminal? Because I don't use Windows as much. There it is. All right, so I am in that shell. Let me do .NET electronize, right? So what this is doing is saying, give me an ASP.NET, Blazor app. So you're going to see the .NET build go past, and then it goes into npm install. So like bring down half the internet on my hard drive. Why not? No, I'm just kidding. npm is all good, but you'll notice that it actually looked at the socket and said, yeah, 127.0.0.1, but you don't want to run this in a browser. When we get that, here's your desktop app in Blazor. So exactly the same thing that we saw with Maui, except this one is Electron, right? So done differently, needs Node.js, has Chromium built in, but it gives you deep OS integrations, and you can go to town. You do not want to do this on mobile because it's a little bit heavy-handed, but on desktop, it absolutely works. Okay, so that's Electron. Makes sense? Now, desktop apps don't need to be old school because they get a bad rap when everything else is modern, right? So let me show you a little bit of we did promise we'll do a little bit of AI, right? Because you're not cool if you're not doing AI. Okay, so just a glimpse of what is possible in a modern desktop app, right? So this is it a WPF app? Yeah, it's a WPF app, okay? AI, right? It doesn't need to be just for web. It doesn't need to be for mobile. AI is just an interface. You can call AI from anywhere. So there are two aspects of AI for me. As one is you as a developer can be more productive as you are typing code. So that's the job of coding assistants that help you out. And then you can pass on some of the benefits of AI to your users. So the user experience gets to be quicker, and they get to do things better and faster. And not all of it needs to be public AI. It can be very well be driven by like local embeddings, things behind your firewalls. So this is the WPF app, and this is a rich text editor control. But it's actually wired up to OpenAI. So I can ask, what is WPF? So at this point, hopefully if my internet stays on, there you go. You see the ghost text, and I can tab. So that's essentially us going to OpenAI and saying, what is WPF? And it comes back with an answer. So think about, passing that down to your users with some context of what they're typing in. So you're cutting down on the amount of typing that they have to do. Let's try this. What is cap area.net? Will it even do this? I don't know. User group, question mark. Let's see if, oh, it's actually, oh no, this is very different, but you get the idea. Large language models don't do a search. They don't learn. Their knowledge is marked in time, and that's kind of what they knew. But you get the idea. So you can actually bring in AI in that sense. So as I am typing in my WPF app, so essentially on the keystroke up, somewhere down here is call OpenAI. There's a flat out key. I should not be sticking in the key, and it could be a secret, but essentially we're using GPT 3.5, going off to make a prompt and coming back with a response, right? So kind of a very bland way of showing that you can do AI from desktop as well. But there are certain things that are very desktop friendly that can actually really shine if you're bringing in some AI. So let me show you this example here. Still a WinForms app, or maybe this is a WPF app here. Think about how much your enterprise workflows often need these document processing, like PDFs and spreadsheets or Word documents. So here, if anyone's a Formula One fan, this one's a spreadsheet. And give me a second. This one is trying to say for the year 2000, Michael Schumacher was the world champion with 9 wins that season. And essentially, we have like all of these years and we have the winner. And what I can do is I can copy those two cells and I can just drag down, right? So very classic Excel desktop app experience. And again, hopefully if my internet holds up and OpenAI APIs are up and about, what we're trying to do is help out the user. So you can see like some of the formatting is a little bit off, but essentially for when I dragged, it did an OpenAI call to say, for this year, can you tell me what the Formula One champion is and how many wins did they have, right? So think about it from the context of your enterprise desktop app. If the user is interacting with a PDF or a spreadsheet, you can actually sprinkle in some intelligence to make their job a little bit easier. So AI is just a RESTful endpoint. You can do AI from any type of app, essentially. All right, so let me show you one more thing that we are just tinkering with, just to show you like the flexibility of what modern UI and AI can be. This is again not a promise that it'll be a product or a part of our grids, but I just trying to show you a little bit of what's possible here. This is very new. And Lee, perhaps we stop after this. I've been going for quite some time, but let me show you one last thing. Ooh, yeah, I know that. So let's see if I can run this app. And will it run? No, it's getting confused. So hold on, I'm gonna step in. Sorry, you're probably hearing my kid downstairs getting hungry for dinner. So let's do this one. Any better? It's trying to load up its dependencies. There, now it is running on my Mac. Okay. So just to give you a glimpse of what is possible, this is a .NET MAUI app. And essentially what we are doing here is, some of this is fake, but think about like a stock application. Think about like an application that has like real-time data that's coming in. So you're going to see a very simple grid, essentially. On a desktop app, but you see that every like 2 seconds the app is polling, and this is all obviously fake data, but it's trying to look at stock prices and things are going green versus red, and that essentially oh, I'm just noticing that there are two columns called history prices, which is bad, but that is essentially a Skia sharp drawn piece of it's not a chart, which will be very expensive to do on a grid. But that is just a Skia 2D drawing of X and Y. We are looking at the last 5 price points for each stock and just trying to plot it on a XY canvas, and essentially just trying to see a trend. If like the last 3 are going down, then it's red. If it's going up, then it's green. But here we are also calling into OpenAI and saying, here are the prices of Microsoft stock in the last 3. Obviously, this is all fake, but what's your advice? Like, should I hold on to the stock? Should I buy it? Strong buy, strong sell. So just a little bit of AI in here trying to help you out with like a new column type, which can be not something you need to define. It's just something you plug into an AI endpoint and give it a bunch of data, and tries to get the context and tries to help out your user. So lots to figure out, a lot of options here on how we light up desktop apps. But let me go back to the deck here on what we started sharing. So you have choices for desktop, right? I didn't even get to cover PWAs. That's a choice for desktop. If you wanted to do Uno platform, that will run on Windows and Mac. If you want to do Avalonia, that will run React Native, Flutter. So lots and lots of choices. Pick your poison. Do the best you can to share code, because that's where essentially it comes down to, right? You are trying to reuse your assets, reuse your expertise. If you're building web apps, by all means, bring that web goodness to desktop. So hopefully you see that we have a lot of ammunition to go change the world. So let's go build amazing apps. Thank you for spending an evening with me here. I went a little bit over an hour, but hopefully this was fun. And I will stop here. And if you have any questions, any concerns, anything that's top of your mind, I'm here. Oh, I see a few claps. Thank you, folks. Thanks for being around this late. Yeah. Any questions come to mind on the chat room? I will maybe stop sharing for a second and look at you all straight and not to the right. All right.
That was awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the recording if that's making folks shy. So there we go.